I'm going to go over a few of the changes that need to be made on these graphic organizers. And don't feel bad about the changes because lots and lots of people made these same errors. The first thing that I want to do is just kind of the overall view, is because a lot of people, they have all these topics on the outside, which was nice. I mean, they did a lot of work, but you just want one concept on the outside ring. So your side should look like this with just gobierno on the outside, and then, or whatever your topic is, and then just alojamiento or whatever your topic is on the inside. Okay, so that's one of the first things you need to do to change your paper. Okay, and I'll get you guys new sheets. All right, so the outside ring should only include one concept. After that, the most common error is that you either didn't show a relationship or you just mentioned the two concepts. Some people didn't even mention both concepts. All right, so your explanation can't just include the concepts. They have to show how one affects the other. And that requires a relationship style verb in the middle. So what I mean by that, let's take a look at this first example. This person wrote, the government has the power to judge who crosses the border towards the United States in search of asylum. So they mentioned government and they mentioned power, but they didn't show a relationship between the two. Okay, and in order to find a verb that will help them show a relationship, I want you to refer to this sheet. This is our, Thesis Fabricator 4.0. But look at all these verbs. It says verbs like feed, supports, attracts, increases, contributes to, establishes, stabilizes, harms, offers, precipitates, prevents. There's all these verbs that show a relationship. Like this is a prime example. I'm not going to read this whole explanation that they have down here, but at the end, what they want to do is show how information decreases security, okay, for these particular, in this particular case. Okay, and ultimately, we want to get to sentences like this. So I kind of summarized this person's idea here very succinctly. We have centralized power restricts liberty. And there's that, see that restricts word? That's the kind of word that you're looking for in order to show a relationship between your two concepts. Okay? All right, after that, some of you might need to reverse or change your concepts in order to make it make sense. Remember, we have all of these concepts to choose from. And some of you did a good job. You were thinking about using them, but you just maybe didn't land on the right one. So let's take a look at this one. They were showing how security affects family. But when we get into their evidence is showing how the government the government had more than 32,000 migrants that entered the country and were given custody. And they had family down here. But what they want to show, instead of how security affects family, because it's hard to really show how the family was affected, you want to probably change these concepts up. And I'm thinking instead of security here, you have how does the government affect security? And that's going to be easier to show with the quote that this person had. Okay. One last thing, not a last thing, but one other thing. Don't paraphrase. So some people had this ellipse right in there. Get rid of that ellipse. All right, no ellipse. Write the whole thing out. And then other people were paraphrasing. They were writing like a summary of the quote. use the whole quote, so that way you have the evidence from its source. You have the exact evidence. Okay? A few side notes. Globalismo is very difficult to account for in this project. You have to show somehow how the whole world or multiple countries are interdependent or interconnected with each other. So that gets a little bit difficult. Organization. Some of you are referring to government agencies as organizations, and that's not the case. A government agency is part of the government. So you want to include government there instead of an organization. There are such things as NGOs, which in Spanish are ONGs. That stands for non-governmental organization. In that case, you would use an organization, okay? Now, it is okay if you're talking about organization in the traditional sense of the word of, like, I'm organizing my papers or I'm organizing my belongings. It is okay to use organization like that. Okay. And then the last thing, and I think this will really help some people to articulate their ideas better. When you say something affects the border, that might be really difficult to articulate, but you might be able to use border conditions. So if you have your center concept as the border, and you change, and as you're articulating how government affects the border, you might say something like, instead of saying affects the border, which is too general, you might say something like government organization increases border traffic, okay? Or government cooperation increases border crossing, something like that. That might be a little bit more articulate to get your ideas across, okay? Hopefully this video helped everybody, and go ahead and start modifying your papers and making a second draft that's a little bit more articulate than your first draft.